I mean, it really started with my parents. My parents were avid cyclists, and my parents would take family bike trips on the weekend. My dad rode his bike to work in Minneapolis when you can. They normalized cycling for me because growing up in the 60s and them in the 50s, African Americans in a black neighborhood biking, was not everybody did that. So it normalized for me, and it was a way for me to kind of keep in touch and contact with my dad. I'd ride to work with him, and I just fell in love.
No buses, and so that was the only way that I really got around. I talked about my neighborhood being like center of suburbia and outskirts of like urban sprawl, and so riding bikes was like one of the very first ways that I was able to kind of get out. I definitely like fell head over heels into cycling. Now it is definitely my main form of transportation, my main form of recreation, the central axis of like so many different relationships in my life.
Bikeworks has like actually helped me a lot with like getting a strong connection to biking and like the freedoms that it offers. Biking has just been a really good outlet for like physical activity, but also just like having that freedom of being able to, go where I need to go.
I think that it's made me a better person, put me in a better place mentally, spiritually. I have people, a community of folks who got my back. Now I'm the second certified Black female bike mechanic in the state. In my community, I'm the first for them. If it wasn't for North Star, I wouldn't be in this position. So all gratitude and thanks to North Star.
I always have like really powerful rides, getting out and riding with trans folks and just like being able to talk about our bodies in ways that feel good and positive. In 2018, Bikeworks sent me and one of another employee to the WTF Explorers Summit. It stands for Women Trans Femme. They recently just changed their name to the Radical Adventure Riders. And that was in Oregon, and it was like a 3-day bikepacking summit. And so I ended up doing a 55-mile gravel ride with a group of 10 people, most of whom I had like never met before. It was the longest ride I'd ever attempted. I don't remember how many feet of climbing it had, but it was definitely a lot of uphill and downhill and through unfamiliar terrain, and it was just like a really powerful experience.
Every time I'd see another Black cyclist or cyclist of color, we would always stop and say, I didn't know you were out here. And so I really wanted to develop a community to share ideas and to go riding with one another and to socialize. I started this after-school program that reached specifically Black and brown youth. And we started out with 2 schools in 2007, and then when I left Cascade Bicycle Club in 2016, it was in 18 schools, and we had reached over 6,000 students. Not only did it bring attention to the lack of access that a lot of these youth have just to get a bicycle, it also brought attention to what's going on in the community. Why the communities look the way they do, that say 80 to 90% of the student population at that high school or middle school was on free or reduced lunch, where a lot of people didn't know that. So this was an example of the bike creating access, and then also the bike creating awareness, not just for the youth, but also for the greater community.
During the George Floyd uprisings, Seattle had kind of a guerrilla bicycle group called Bike Brigade that was out in the streets and just providing a certain amount of distance and separation between protesters and vehicles, whether that be just the random passerbys or specifically cops. When people are taking to the streets and needing that type of safety. The bicycle in so many ways is something that's very accessible. You don't need to have the nicest bike or be the fastest rider to get out and use your bicycle in that type of way.
There's definitely a correlation between like biking and women's liberation. It is a liberation to be able to, transport yourself and not have to pay for like a car. I think that is also, it really helps with like making things more accessible for people, especially if there's like a good biking system in the city.
Rainier Avenue is the place where more pedestrians are killed by cars than any other spot in Seattle. And thinking about why that is the way that it is, and it's because so many of people who engage in cycling activism are these wealthy white folks who don't really think about the accessibility and who is actually relying on bicycles as their primary form of transportation. And I think that Seattle has some really cool things going on, like so many people at Bikeworks are involved in North Star.
So North Star is, like I said, the only Black and brown cycling crew in the city. It's when I started riding with one of the founders, which is Aaron Bossett, good friend of mine. He actually created it for a space for Black men to like come and ride, and so they had a safe space, you know, to come together. His lady was riding with them, and so she's the first lady, and then I started riding with them, and you know, slowly but surely more women started showing up. So then it was like, oh, let's make this focus on all of us, like Black women, Black men, this is a safe space for us, community, and it just grew from there.
The way I've seen it, it's really this great equalizer. We don't know our job titles, our socioeconomic status, political views, and you can discover that on a bike. It just really doesn't matter.
It don't matter what your background is. I mean, we don't ask like folks like, hey, what do you do for a living? Or what's your marital status? Or, you know, your gender, or, you know, we just are all there just to vibe and ride.
I look back on your question as far as what got me here. It's been through a lot of it's been through a lot of self-exploration. It's been through a lot of courage. It's been through a lot of pain. It's been through a lot of joy. And what's guided me through that is my parents. The mentorship and guidance they gave my brother and I, and also what they provided for my brother and I. And I see that possibility for other Black and brown youth, for other youth, period. And I feel that they should have the same opportunities that I do.